Hey guys, got an interesting one here. We've got a game that's played by one of my students, and it's 800 versus 800. Actually, 812 against 813. Couldn't be much closer. So Ed's got the black pieces. The opponent starts with e4, and we have d6. So we're going into a Piet's defense. And now, somebody has been worshipping at the Temple of Nelson, by the look of it. Queen h5, but this isn't a wayward queen attack because e5 hasn't been played, so e5 isn't a target. There isn't a target here, really. Okay, so natural knight to f6, of course, comes out. Now the queen comes across again. Proper Nelson style stuff. Yes, it comes with check, but there are several ways to block this. About at least 5. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 possible ways to block that. So he goes for c6, kicking the queen again, and the queen now retreats. So good option here, I think. Bishop e6 develops, gets the bishop outside of these pawn chain. The dark square bishop's looking a little bit less comfortable and would hit the queen, but he grabs the loose pawn, why not? And now bishop coming out here, so we've got now a battery looking at f7. So that's one response. I think I might have been tempted here just to play d5, hitting the bishop, creating the pawn chain, and not weakening things. So here, if bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, and now the this pawn's gone, so we've lost a pawn. And also the knight's in trouble, so that's what the opponent plays. And now they grab, b7. So that's another problem with moving this bishop. So if you do the goldfish method, you'd have done this and realised actually the only defender of that pawn is that bishop, right? So just like this, and the knight's actually undefended. Okay, so this pawn is only defended once, which means moving this bishop isn't a good idea. So that was a mistake. But anyway, so now we have a rook under attack. That pawn is currently defended by that knight. So how do we get out of this? Queen b6 does not defend the rook. Wow, so here white decides not to capture the rook because the queen could actually be trapped in that situation. Let's say if queen takes here, the queen's actually got no moves it can make without being captured. So here, the opponent, who's from the Ukraine, plays queen c8 check. Queen comes back into block, and now white grabs yet another. So we have this marauding queen situation. So grab that other loose pawn, and also attacking this knight. So what do we do now? Now you have to keep a cool, calm head. And this is the move that should probably have been played earlier on. Okay, so we have a queen deep in enemy territory and no other development to speak of whatsoever on white side of the board. Also, we have to say that the pawn situation here is not great. We've lost a couple of pawns. So we're actually only one pawn down at this point. But if this bishop can come out, then I think castling kingside, putting the rook on f8 wouldn't be a bad idea. Okay, so white now pushes d3, which could release this bishop out into the board. It's also obviously hitting the knight. Knight moves back to f6. Bishop comes out. So this is starting to look somewhat threatening. So queen b6 now defends the knight. Also attacks the b2 pawn and the rook, and possible ideas of this as well, but it's not going to be backed up by the dark squared bishop anytime soon. So we have knight now to e2, queen takes. This pawn is still defended by the knight, but we are still looking somewhat exposed. Knight to b1. Again, does not save the rook. So queen takes rook. And how does white get out of check? I mean, you've got knight there, queen takes. You've got knight there, queen takes. So this looks like it could end. Okay, knight there, and okay. Right, there you go. So now that the first knight had moved, that's interesting. It's a discovered defense by the bishop, you see. So that was a good spot by white. Okay, now the queen can't take because it's defended by the bishop. Now, if white had played it the other way round, that would actually be mate. So did it the right way around. Anyway, so now we're actually 8 points up in material. We've just won a knight and a rook. However, the king is still in some jeopardy. Queen grabs another pawn. Bishop grabs the knight. Queen comes in with check. Good move. There's only one legal move here. King has to move to e2. e2. Queen gets rook. Wow. Now queen c8 check. And this is starting to get rather hairy. All right. Queen comes in. Now there's no escape for the rook. So this is a desperado move. When you know you're going to lose material, you have to be pragmatic and say, right, what is the most compensation that I can possibly get? And clearly, grab the bishop on your way out is the way to go. Queen grabs, but now black is in a very dominant position. Okay, queen grabs a pawn, queen grabs a pawn, pawn starts to come down. Okay, here, queen takes f2 with check would have been perfectly all right as well. But black wants to get the final bishop and rook into play, which makes sense. Okay, it's going to be too little too late for white here. There's just not enough to play with. Okay, so bishop comes out with check, check again. Now the knight takes there. Okay, so this is maybe setting up a discovered check. We'll see. Pawn advances again, but black can quite happily sacrifice this rook. Just keep that rook in the pocket there. Quite happily sacrifice that rook to get rid of that pawn at any time. Discovered check. King comes in. Queen b2, well spotted, using the bishop as a protector. King moves on to the side. Now how do you finish from here? Check again. There's only now one legal move because the pawn's covering this square, queen's covering all of these. Check again, king comes back. Rook across now, doubling up with the queen, and checkmate. There you go. Okay, so wow, a rip-roaring game there between two 800s. Definitely some errors that can be improved upon. I mean, this early queen attack, you know, you only have to play a couple of games against Nelson to figure that out. So the queen's now made 1, 2, 3 moves in the first 4 moves. And we lose a knight. Now, here I think I would definitely have considered d5 as an option. So, yes, we've got an overwhelm on there. Okay, so one option is e6, would have been fine. Bishop takes, you even got bishop takes. d5, even better, probably because it hits the bishop and also defends the knight there as well. That would have been good. Bishop out was not a good move, as we've seen. It hangs this pawn. So at this point in the game, we've got 40 minutes on the clock. Yeah, you really have to say, and this is a big difference between sub 1000 and above 1000 play, is where you say, okay, look, what are my options? No, really, what are all of my options? Okay, my objective is to protect that. And yes, it's great to say that let's do that with development, but in this instance, that just wasn't the way to go. So either of these pawn moves would have been just fine, I think. You really do have to go, okay, what are all my options? Yes, I've seen that. Okay, if I play that, what's going to happen? Well, bishop takes. Then I really have to recapture. And yeah, we're going to be a pawn down, whatever happens. In the end, the queen actually grabbed this pawn. So yeah, definitely an interesting game, and definitely a great example of holding onto your nerve when you've got guerrilla opponents in your camp. Yeah, I think this would have been far superior, because now the bishop has to retreat, and there's only really 3 squares there. So let's say bishop comes here. I think we would have been in quite a comfortable situation there. So maybe now perhaps bring this bishop out and get a kind of a London structure. I think would have been cool there. But there you go. Nice little rip-roaring 800 game to share with you. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe, comment, say what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.